Ichi-go Ichi-e, this old Japanese proverb, which means one time, one meeting, represents the cultural concept of treasuring moments that are unrepeatable because upon pondering, we figure out that's how life is actually is. Compilation of moments that are never to happen again, regardless of their impact. Welcome, everyone, to the second episode of our live series, Ichi-go Ichi-e, where we discuss about and present valuable insights about growth, self-improvement, and skill development. This show is brought to you by Team Bertho and the Youth Exchange South to South, aka Yes Girls Movement. Team Bertho is a youth-led platform working on documenting the stages of understanding life through people's learnings and pass them on as innovative, creative, and effective solutions to to everyone live their best life. This is your host, Fahmina Semonty. I'm the resource head of Team Bertho. The topic of today's session is the benefits and uses of yoga as therapy in order to ensure a better living. And our guest for today's session is Niya Bajaj, a holistic yoga therapist from Canada. Hello, Niya.
Hi, it's so nice to be here.
Thank you, Ray. It's so nice to finally meet you. I've been very excited for this session for a long time, ever since we knew that you're going to be our guest, because the topic that you're going to cover is so interesting. So, Niya, I had the privilege to get to know you, not personally, but through your Instagram handle a little bit. And I want to say that your journey of experiencing chronic pain since your childhood and how you got over them through practices of yoga is truly inspiring and very, very moving. And now you are working on helping others through healing by using the practices of yoga and the techniques of yoga. So before you start with the session, I want to, if you may, could you please tell our audience a little bit about your journey and your work? We would love to hear that elaborately through your mouth.
Absolutely, I love talking about how I got here and why this work is so meaningful for me. So you already know a little bit about this, but for our audience, benefit who doesn't follow me on Instagram. As a child, I grew up with chronic pain, and sort of as young as 4 or 5, not being able to sleep days because all of my joints and that made it really hard. It made me really hard. It's really inactive. And you know, I take this and
Nia, I'm going to interrupt you a little bit over here. We can't hear you properly. I mean, I know it's a little bit icky, but could you like speak a little louder, or is there any earbuds you could use? I mean, we can't hear you properly.
Is it better if I speak like this?
Yeah, it's definitely better.
Okay, I'll speak in my projecting voice.
Okay.
Or, in my speaking voice for a large group.
Oh, that would be incredible because that already sets the mood.
Yeah, it's a little. I'm still getting. It's weird. It's 16 months into a pandemic, and I'm still getting used to speaking loudly to a phone.
Naya, I just interrupt you once again. I'm sorry for that. Is there a headphone or earbuds you could use?
Yes, if you will excuse me for one moment to go get them.
Yeah, but sure, please.
I'll be right back.
Okay. So, as you can see, that our guest for today, Niya Bajaj, she excused herself for a moment to get her earbuds. So I'm hoping that our dear audience, you guys would wait a little bit more diligently before we jump into our topic, because I can assure you, when Niya shares her experience with us, it will be truly, truly worth it.
Is this better for you?
Oh yeah, it's definitely better. Thank you very much.
No worries. I'm happy to restart the story if that's helpful too.
No, that would be absolutely incredible. Thank you.
All right. So yeah, so as a child, I grew up with chronic pain. I remember being sort of as young as 4 or 5 years old and having pretty severe pain in my joints to the point where I couldn't sleep for days, which of course impacts everything in your life because sleep is so critical. It made going to school really hard. It made making friends really hard. I was a pretty inactive kid. And so as a result, I also gained a fair amount of weight, which all, as you know, being a fat kid is not a fun experience. Anyone who's lived through it knows that. And so as a result, I then just developed also a pretty disordered pattern of eating and a pretty terrible relationship with my body. And this went on for a fair period of time. And it really impacted the quality of my life to the point where, sort of in my late teens, early 20s, I was like, if this is going to be it, do I really want to be around for, a lifetime of not feeling good, in my body, in my mind? And it was, oh, and we also, because I grew up in Bahrain and there was no real sort of option for post secondary school there. When I was 13, my family also moved to Canada. So I would have better sort of access to education opportunities. So then I had to deal with sort of a huge cultural upheaval. The few friends that I did have, I didn't have anymore. And sort of all of that was very anxiety provoking for me as a young person. And based on all of that, my dad was just like, you're not in a good place. Why don't you go to a yoga class and see how it feels? Which was an interesting experience because I don't know if this is deliberate. He says it was an accident, but he signed me up for a class for seniors. And so I walked into this yoga studio with, a room full of 70 and 80-year-olds, and they were very gracious about having me as a 13-year-old in their practice room. But in that practice was the first time I felt safe in my body, and I felt sort of connected in a way that wasn't about pain and wasn't about, being medicalized. And it was really, really interesting. And I was sort of watching the practice as I was doing it and sort of looking at all of these seniors moving really comfortably in their bodies. And I thought, I want that. I want, whether I have full range of motion or not is a different question, but I want to feel safe and comfortable in myself so I can move and not be miserable all of the time. And that was a really powerful experience. So, of course, I logically concluded, as most South Asian children are encouraged to do, that I should go to medical school and figure out how to, heal things. And so that was my sort of educational path for a while until I got to university and realized going to medical school was not a good fit for me at all. And which was, a hard thing to understand about myself. And so I've, instead pursued a career in a different path, but continued my yoga practice with a whole range of teachers since then. And, I'm 35 today, so it's been a good 20 plus years of practice. And through that, I've sort of realized that using all of the practice of yoga, so not just the movement, which is sort of the most common and most westernized practice, but using the philosophies of it, the ethics that come with it, the sort of internal habit building practices, as well as movement and breath and mindfulness and meditation and focus, have all significantly contributed to my positive quality of life. And because I was so, it sounds, hippie granola to say transformed, but it really was transformed by it. I wanted to be able to offer that to other people because today, like it's, 7:45 in the morning, I'm up, I'm high energy, I'm here with you, which I'm super excited about, and nothing hurts. And I couldn't imagine that as a possibility, even as sort of, a 16-year-old. And so to be able to offer that to really anyone who is struggling is a huge gift for me. And I'm really excited to do this work with people. And it does, like, you don't have to live with chronic pain to work with me. You don't have to have disordered eating to work with me. You could feel perfectly fine and want to continue feeling perfectly fine for the rest of your life. And we would be able to work on that too. Hopefully that was elaborate enough.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was a very beautiful introduction for yourself and for your work. And now, what we're here to do, I'm going to completely leave the leash of the reins into your hand, and you're going to conduct the session as you please. And I just want to add one thing, that I'm 18, 19 years old now, and even now when I wake up at 7 or 6 in the morning, it's really hard to jump into work because the feeling of lethargy is all over my body. So actually, listening to you and hearing you and comprehending what you're saying is truly inspiring. So now, what I promised to do, I'm gonna do that. It's all yours now.
So what I would actually really love to do for all of your viewers is to teach you a couple of breath techniques, to be honest. So I teach these to pretty much all of my students. They're generally considered quite safe and very accessible. However, breathing does impact your nervous system. So if at any point you feel uncomfortable or you realize the practice is not for you, go back to sort of breathing normally. Feel free to, get up and take a walk, do something different with your body. Because for some people, these can trigger, residual trauma responses and other things that they've been holding in their body and their nervous system for a little bit of time. But generally speaking, that should not happen. If it does, please seek whatever care you need as you need it. But the first one is, in yogic breath, there are actually 4 parts. Most people are aware of 2, the inhale and the exhale, which you do naturally without thinking about it very much. But in yoga, we hold the breath after the inhale and after the exhale, which is the part that most people find sometimes a little bit tension building. And this practice, some people know it as square breathing or box breathing, and it's a really great way to engage with all 4 parts of the breath, but also to really hone your focus. So Navy SEALs in the US have been using this technique before they have to go into really tense, high focus situations, and they found it quite effective. So this is something I like to offer my students, before they have to go into meetings or before they're studying for exams, or before they have to go into anything where they really need to be attentive. And so the way the practice would work is, classically, you would find a comfortable seat, whether that's on a chair or on a floor, and just take a moment, maybe use an inhalation to feel your spine lengthen so you have space to breathe. And as you exhale, you might just tuck your chin very slightly to lengthen the back of your neck. And maybe take a couple of breaths here, observing the sensation in your body, noticing what it feels like to breathe. And if you aren't congested, you're going to try and do this breath in and out through your nose for as long as comfortable. The way this breath will work, we'll inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, exhale for 4, and then hold for 4. If that count is too long for you, please feel free to pick a breath length that works, but I'll be counting for. To begin, we'll exhale as much air out as possible, and then inhale for a count of 1, 2, 3, 4, hold for 1, 2, 3, 4, exhale 4, 3, 2, 1, hold 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4, hold 1, 2, 3, 4, exhale 4, 3, 2, 1, hold 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4, hold 1, 2, 3, 4, exhale 4, 3, 2, 1, hold 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4,
Hold 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold 4, 3, 2, 1. Last one. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold 4, 3, 2, 1. And then inhale for as long as is comfortable. And exhale. You might exhale through the mouth and sigh. Do one more. Inhale. And exhale. And then take a moment here, just pause. Notice what everything feels like. Maybe notice where your mind has gone. Maybe notice what sensation is like in your body. If anything is different, take note. If nothing changed, that's also absolutely fine. One of the really awesome things about a therapeutic yoga practice is the fact that we deliberately build in those mindful pauses so you can observe what is happening and take note and use that information, whether it's, with a chronic health condition to take to your physician about changes observed over time, or whether it's for your own uses for habit change. It's a useful way to check in with yourself, something we're not generally encouraged to do. The second breath practice that I'd like to walk you through is an alternate nostril exhale. And this breath is great for helping to rebalance the nervous system. It's really great for building capacity for exhalation. In yoga, and this is maybe ironic to some people, when we're trying to teach people to, or trying to help people, most know how to breathe, we're trying to help people to build their capacity for breath, especially with high performance athletes, swimmers, people for whom breathing is a critical part of their work. We actually work on the exhalation as opposed to building out the inhalation, because once your exhalation is quite long, your inhalation is naturally going to become long because it's a reflex response to the exhale. Breath physiology is also a fascinating thing that I'm happy to chat about if anyone has any questions. And so in this breath, because the focus is on the exhale, you end up lengthening it sometimes quite significantly. In classical yoga, the breath counts are for 10. So the inhalation would be for 10 seconds, the holds would be for 10, and the exhalation would also be for 10. Most people aren't at 10. I'm not at 10 just yet. It is a lifelong practice. But this is a great way to build to that and to help sort of balance the nervous system. So really useful after a period of stress or a very stressful event to sort of calm yourself. I also really like to do this first thing in the morning to help be balanced. I do this before I get out of bed, to be honest. I did it before this session, just so you can come into it from a place of balance and ease. And so the way this breath works is that you'll inhale, again, if you're not congested, freely through both nostrils, and then you'll actually close the left one, exhale just through your right nostril, inhale freely through both nostrils, and then close the right one and exhale through the left. So I like to support my elbow. I'm using my knee. You can use a block or a pillow if you're sitting cross-legged, or if you have a desk or your chair has arms, just so your shoulder doesn't get tired while you're doing this exercise. So I'll give you a quick demo of what it looks like, and then we can do it together. So inhale through both nostrils, Close the left and exhale through the right. Inhale through both. Close the right to exhale through the left. If you'd like, you can leave your hand fairly close to your face so you don't have to sort of move around a lot. But when you're ready, again, if you've changed position, maybe using an inhale to lengthen the spine. And on the exhale, maybe tucking the chin slightly so you feel a stretch in the back of your neck. Take one more breath here, reconnecting and noticing what's happening, maybe where you're holding tension. And exhaling. And setting up your arms. Inhale through both nostrils. Exhale, close left head. Inhale both. Close right and exhale. Inhale both. Close left exhale. Inhale both. Close right exhale. Inhale both. Close left exhale. Inhale both. Close right exhale. Inhale both. Close left exhale. Inhale both. Close right exhale. Inhale both. Left exhale. Inhale both. Close right. Last round. Inhale both. Close left exhale. Inhale. Close right exhale. Inhale both. And exhale. One more. And exhale. And again, feel free to take a moment, notice how everything feels. If anything has shifted in your body or mind, or if the length of your breath has changed, it might have. If you feel the need to yawn or to stretch, feel free to do that. And there you go, a little taste of what I do with my students. There are a lot of benefits to working with the breath, particularly when engaging with the nervous system, because if your nervous system is balanced, a lot of other things in the world become easier to do because you are less reactive sometimes.
Thank you very much, Niya. This techniques actually will help us very much, and I practiced along with you, and I have a little bit of congestion in my nose, and I can totally feel this actually helped a lot. So, okay, I'm going to set this straight in front of our audiences. Which pronunciation do you prefer, Niya or Naya? Because I'm missing it up throughout the video, and I'm really embarrassed. I'm so sorry.
It's all good. So I actually don't have a preference because people like the letter I in English can either be an I sound or an E sound. And, classically, traditionally, it would be an E sound, but so many people say it as an I sound. So I'm happy to respond to both. You have not been messing up. It's
Okay,
actually nice that you presented the diversity of my name to the world.
okay, thank you very much for reassuring me. Now I feel a little bit better. So now that the session, the session part, I mean, where you teach us about the breathing techniques are over, we're gonna jump into the question answer portion of this video. So if you allow me.
Absolutely. That sounds great. I love taking questions.
So we're just gonna shake it up a little bit. Okay. So our first question is, what is your recipe to deal with silence? There's a metaphorical, poetic use of recipe to deal with silence. So what is your recipe? It's actually kind of funny that he used the word recipe, but still, it's nice. So sorry, I'm blabbering way too much. Please give
No,
us your answer.
it's so great. I'm wondering if this is because I've also been posting a lot of like dorky Instagram recipe reels, and so now I'm like, should I make one for silence? Um, I love this question because I personally really love silence, but I recognize that it's quite uncomfortable for many people. And sort of the more time we spend in this hyper-connected world, the harder it is to not only find silence, but then to appreciate it, because I don't think anyone is teaching this really,
No.
except for meditation teachers. And even then, it's quite a struggle because most people have a hard time sitting for meditation, much less finding the actual silence in it. Which is why sort of yoga is such a great practice. The movement practice that has been sort of globally popularized is actually just a tool to help people sit in meditation for longer because all of your joints have been worked properly. And so then you can sit for more than sort of 5 minutes without your foot falling asleep. And most people are surprised when I tell them that. So I don't know that I sort of deal with silence like it's an uncomfortable or unpleasant thing. I actually seek it out and try and deliberately create places of silence, because in that silence, at least for me, and I think for many people who sort of have cultivated over time of either a meditation or mindfulness practice, there's the opportunity for observation. And whether that's observing the breath, like we just did a little bit in our practice, or observing what's happening in your mind and sort of where your thoughts tend to wander naturally, which is a fascinating exercise if anyone has time to do it, just to see naturally where your mind goes. I think there's the opportunity to learn a great deal about yourself in that silence. And not all of it will be pleasant or comfortable. So, a good care team is nice to have when you run into those parts of yourself that are maybe not the ones that you're proud of or that you're really happy to know. But making space for all of them is a critical exercise to feeling better within yourself. So this isn't a good answer to the question. There is no 1 cup of this and 2 tablespoons of that for silence. Not whether I'm creating it or dealing with it. But I think it's a skill worth cultivating, not only being able to access silence, but then also to observe with it. And there's a whole other side to silence too, which is like silence in community. When you sit in Sangha and you're sort of quiet together and you observe just energetic shifts, or to sit in nature in silence, which is such a beautiful, beautiful experience if you have access to the outside world. I'm lucky to be sort of in Canada, which is a country of wide open spaces. And so the ability to just sit outside and be in complete awe of everything that is happening, things that are growing despite massive change in the world, and things that are, seeking nourishment, and all of these wonderful, wonderful things. It's one of my favorite ways to build resilience, is just to like sit in the dirt in the sun and just like be in awe of everything that is happening. So terrible answer to a really good question. I'm so delighted by it.
Yeah, it was an incredible answer. Thank you very much. But I just want to put a little joke to it. Maybe he was trying to refer to if you have any food recipe in order to, like we have comfort food, like we eat something in order to feel comfortable. We eat something in order to numb the voices around ourselves. If there's something food that will keep people in a silent position, it's a terrible joke.
I mean, I imagine very spicy food would either sort of make people very loud or very, very quiet.
It makes me scream. So, and sometimes I pass out. Once I had bhel puri, which had too much spice, and I literally passed out on my school grounds. It's another story. I'll share it someday else, but today it's about you. So it makes people scream mostly, but yeah. Also, if I pass out, that's completely silence, right? Because
Yeah,
I
like,
can't even think.
yeah, you're gone. So I was like, it's one way. Yes.
Okay, so we'll jump into our next question. Our next question is, where does your inspiration find its roots? Wow, that's great.
These are
That's
such
great.
deep questions for me, you know, at 8 a.m. in the morning. I love this question. My inspiration comes from my lived experience. So things that I have experienced in my own life, benefits that I have seen from my practice, and somewhat sort of hilariously, this is actually how yoga therapists work, where I would never offer a student something that I hadn't tried myself. So we use techniques in yoga therapy like water fasting, where for 3 days or 5 days, all like you drink water and nothing else. You might sort of have some tea or like worst case scenario, maybe some broth, but that's all you do. And for most people, it's unthinkable to not eat for sort of 3 or 5 days. But it's a great therapeutic tool to manage inflammation and reduce pain and do all sorts of really, really fascinating things. But in order for me to offer that to a student, I have to do it myself. And I remember trying it for the first time, and it was, oh, this is also going to sound very hippie and granola, but sort of a transcendent experience. Because your mind really clears too when you're like, oh, I don't have to think about shopping for food or making food or buying food or eating. Like there's all this energy that goes into that, but then my body also doesn't need all this energy for digestion. So I have all this capacity to do all these other things. But because I've lived the experience, now when I offer it to a student, I have points that I can sort of refer to in my own practice. So when they run into a hurdle or they're having a hard time with it, they have someone that they can talk to who has lived through it versus someone who's like, oh, I read about it in a book. It sounds interesting. You should try it. So my inspiration and all of the therapy that I offer people is from my lived experience.
Wow. And given from you and knowing from your that introduction that you gave us today, your inspiration was actually very uh, moving. And I've used that word before, but I'm going to use it again because it was very moving. Because from the places that you dealt with in your childhood, and now where you are, and you're helping others and helping them deal with this. And honestly speaking, no one could even imagine that you were a fat kid when you were young, because you seem really, really fit, and that is incredible. And also, I mean, it's 8 a.m. and it's probably 8:30 in the morning, and we're talking about existential questions. And honestly, I'm a student now, and if anybody would ask, uh, even the origin of my name, I would snap at them. And you're answering these questions. That's incredible. So we're gonna jump into the next question now, which is wow, how yoga can develop our self-confidence. It's a common thing. It's a common question. It's probably rooted in all of our brains, and our you are our savior who's gonna help us by answering this very asked question.
This is such a great question. Anyone who's known me for really like more than a week knows that I have an like unreasonably high level of self-confidence. It's not rooted in anything, it just is. Like even as a kid, people were like, oh, why do you think you're so good at X? And my answer was always like, I just know that I am. Like I don't need you to tell me anything about it. I already know. Based on no empirical evidence. So I was a very bad scientist as a child. But yoga is a really great tool to develop self-confidence, whether or not you have an unreasonably high level of it already. Because if you practice it outside of just the movement piece, but even if you only just practice the movement piece, you have those opportunities for observation about things that you can do. And if you practice consistently, in a perfect world every day, you'll notice changes and developments, often positive, sometimes not so positive, but then you can also be thoughtful about how you move forward. So to use a movement practice, lunging is something we do in warrior. We have 3 sort of asana. In English, they are sort of the warrior poses. And if you were to do these every day, on day 1, you might notice that your knees are stiff or your hips are tight, or, it doesn't feel really nice in your low back when you do this. But, on day 7, you might find you have a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more ease in the shape. On day 15, you might be like, oh, this feels easy and comfortable now. And so that opportunity to observe your capacity for change and growth over time through sort of consistency is a great way, I think, to build self-confidence, because you develop that lived experience, to sort of take it back to the last question, that you can make positive change and you can grow and you can do really awesome things that you might not have thought were possible with sort of the tools that you literally have that you can take anywhere with you. That's the sort of beauty of a yoga practice. You don't need a mat. You don't need sort of fancy yoga pants. You don't really need anything except a comfortable surface. I wouldn't suggest practicing sort of on a concrete floor. But you can practice literally anywhere at any time because you have this innate capacity for it. And, it doesn't have to be a movement practice. You could just do one of the 2 kinds of breath that we did today. That in and of itself is a practice. You might explore sort of, lengthening your breath to go from a 4 count to a 10 count over time. And that is a huge skill to have. And I think is pretty confidence building, to be honest, to know that like of your own volition, you have capacity to do these things, which if you can do that, you can probably really do anything that you commit to and, devote some deliberate attention to, which, I mean, if you can do that, like literally you can change the whole world. It might take a couple of other people, but it's the real thing in my opinion. So a practice that is dedicated and, dedicated as your life allows. I'm not suggesting you take 2 hours a day and do this. I don't have 2 hours a day for my own personal practice. I have 15 minutes in the morning and that's what I do every day, but I have the ability to observe and then I can make decisions about what I do that day as well that are sort of safe and accessible for me. So if I wake up with pain, then I know I'm not going to teach a handstand class or, with a student who wants to do the splits, I might just talk to them about them instead of trying to do them myself. Which is also a level of confidence to know where your boundaries are and to be able to speak them, which not everyone knows how to do. And so to learn where they are and then to work with other professionals to figure out how to communicate those. Long-winded answer, but yeah, I think it's a great practice for this.
Thank you. That was very helpful. So our next question would be, can I do yoga if I'm not flexible enough? How to work better on my flexibility? It's also a very common question. And I wonder about that every day while I lay on my bed, honestly.
I love this question because I get this question from a lot of people who are like, oh, I can't see a yoga therapist. I'm not flexible. And I was like, well, if you don't see a yoga therapist, how will you become flexible? I have a deep issue with this terrible sort of Western marketing approach to yoga that's like, you have to be hyper flexible, you have to be young, you have to be all of these things in order to practice. You have to be a woman, you almost always have to be white, sometimes you have to be blonde. This is what I see in the world. Or like sometimes I'm walked into yoga studios and people have been like, you can't be a yoga teacher because you don't look like one. You're full. Someone was like, you're too fat to be a yoga teacher. And I was like, I'm a South Asian woman. Like, if anyone should be teaching you yoga, it should be me or another South Asian person. But, those are the problems I deal with here sometimes. You don't have to be flexible to do yoga. If you can breathe, and like even if you're breathing through your mouth, you can practice. I work with students who have chronic fatigue, who have chronic pain, who are in palliative care, who literally cannot get out of bed, and we still practice yoga. So this imaginary construct that you need to be able to, do things with your body is not true. Start a practice literally anywhere. At any point in time that you feel safe and comfortable with a teacher that you trust, and you will build flexibility over time the same way you build strength over time, the same way you build breath capacity over time. There is no prerequisite to yoga other than being able to breathe. If you're not breathing, you are probably dead, at which point yoga is not going to help.
Fair enough.
But at any point before that, you can definitely practice.
I hope that answers her question. What do you suggest for beginners who lost motivation after doing it after a few days?
I'm going to ask your beginners if they're using YouTube videos, because if that's the case, I can see why you're losing motivation. What I would suggest is find a teacher that you trust, like in person. If I don't know if where you are allowed to be in person with teachers, but like even if it's over Zoom or like whatever digital platform that you're using, but like actually connect with another person in some way. Because that is hugely motivating, but also they'll be able to sort of support your practice in a real way versus you as an individual by yourself trying to build this whole new habit. And maybe you know what's appropriate for your body. Maybe no one has sort of walked you through what's safe and comfortable and accessible. So like actually work with a teacher. And even if it's only for 5 or 6 classes, and then you have a good sense of where you are, and then you can use all the YouTube videos that you want. But if you're just starting out and struggling with motivation, work with a teacher. And I recognize that can be expensive, and I recognize that it might not be accessible to everyone, but there are lots of teachers who are offering free services, especially over COVID. That's been sort of an increase within the wellness community. So if you can find a teacher to work with, it will help you build those habits of practice that then you can sustain by yourself when you're ready to.
Okay, so thank you very much. I hope it answers her question. Fahmina Shuchi is saying, which type of yoga offers a good digestion? Like any practice of 20-30 minutes for better digestion.
So this is a great question to ask a yoga therapist, because our practice is the way we work with students, and every yoga therapist does this, is that it's a personalized practice. So, my question to you is, where is the digestive concern? Like good digestion is very broad, right? Like where is the issue? Is it acidity? Is it heartburn? Is it bloating? Like what's actually happening that we need to address? Because then we can design a customized practice that addresses that issue. And it might not even be that you need a movement practice. It might just be a simple diet change that would solve all of your problems, which is also a form of yoga. It's not, asana, and it's not breathing. But that might be the solution to all of the issues. So it's a little bit difficult for me to just be like, here's a practice that works for everyone all the time, because all of you are different. You're, from different parts of the world, you're eating different things, you're moving differently, you have different family responsibilities. So there is no one size fits all in yoga. And it's actually, in my opinion, a little bit dangerous to be like, here, just do this, it will work, without, meeting you and knowing all of the wonderful complexities of your life. So sorry for that not fulfilling answer and link to YouTube video, but that's not something I can give you.
I guess most of those videos or articles that project that do this, it's gonna change your life. I think they're just doing it for clickbait, because at the end of the day, it doesn't help many people, like 1 or 2 people, and most people are just like, this doesn't work for me. I mean, it's not supposed to be working for us, because our environments are different, our lifestyles are different, our family backgrounds are different, our genetics are different. So it's normal that one shoe would not fit all, but we're all looking for free size yoga pants, I guess. That was I'm just gonna tuck my legs in them and it's gonna fit us all magically. Something like that movie, The Sisterhood of Traveling Pants. Like that pant fits for them all. It's something like that. And actually, it feels fulfilling that one thing would fit everyone, because at that time we won't have to put much of our effort into thinking which is gonna work for us. So, Niya, we're gonna okay. This is our third last question. After Arshiya's question, I'm gonna ask you a question, and then we're gonna go for the last question.
All right.
Are you on board with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. What is the one thing you're in denial about your life?
These are such deep questions.
Very existential.
Well, I guess, yoga is philosophical. That is true. Um, I guess the one thing that I have always been in denial about is that I can't actually do everything. I have this like I said, this like unreasonable, deep self-confidence that I can do whatever I want, regardless. And I'm slowly getting, I like to pretend that I'm slowly getting better at this and that I'm like learning to ask people for help. And I'm, building out collectives and teams to do very large projects as opposed to sort of being the person who does it all by herself. But I still have this unfounded belief that if I just put in enough effort, everything will work and it will all be successful. And so my learning as I get older is that some things will just happen in their own time. And I don't want to believe that. Most of the time, I want everything to happen on my own schedule. If you can't tell, I have a little bit of a control issue. And I also just want to believe that my sheer amount of will and effort will transform things, which is also, well, sometimes alchemical, not always true.
Thank you. I think that answers your question. So what I'm about to ask you is that you said in one of your answers that there are parts of ourselves that we are not very comfortable with, and some of us go through a lot of traumatic experiences with our lives. So I want to ask you this breathing exercise when we try to look inside, implore inside, inward, and try to know about ourselves. Those really, really dark and dire parts sometimes freak us out, and sometimes, they mess up with our brains. So how are we supposed to deal with them without getting a panic attack? I mean, how is yoga going to help us accepting ourselves or working on ourselves in a more profound way?
This is a really great question. And so I'm going to say a couple of things about it. First, yoga therapy doesn't exist in a vacuum. So it is not the answer to all of the questions all of the time. And so depending on sort of the aspect of the self that you find that you are not comfortable with or happy to know, you might sort of benefit from seeing a psychoanalyst or a psychotherapist or some sort of talk therapist. I'm actually, once I finish my yoga therapy accreditation, starting a course in narrative medicine to sort of explore that storytelling aspect and the language aspect of healing, because yoga is very body-based. And sort of there's 5 layers of the body that we work with, but none of them deal with sort of story and the things we tell ourselves or the things we tell other people about ourselves. So definitely, please, don't decide yoga therapy is the only thing you're ever going to do. Continue seeing your GP and your allopathic doctors, and if you need the support of a mental health practitioner, please see those people as well. Yoga is useful in sort of sitting with these uncomfortable parts of the self. And the breath is sort of one way to get into it, but there are 8 limbs of yoga, and sort of the second last 3 of them, that didn't make any sense. So
It makes.
5, 6, and 7 of the 8 are the sort of aspects where you sit and you become more mindful, you develop a meditation practice, and then you develop a focus. And ultimately, in the Yoga Sutra, sort of when your focus is so honed, it feels like you and the object of your focus are one, which is a very aspirational place to be, and I don't know if I'll get there in my lifetime. But that ability to sort of meditate and get to know all of the parts of yourself and to sort of welcome all of them with a sense of loving kindness, which sort of comes from the Buddhist practice. Someone actually said it's like you invite all of the parts of yourself that you don't like to tea, and you sit down to a tea party with them. And you observe them the way you would observe your guests. You know them. You might not love them all the time. I mean, we all have those friends where you're like, oh God, you're here again. But you sit with them, you get to know them better, you understand their purpose. You try to be, try not to throw the tea at them. Sometimes you might want to. But it's that.
You try to be kind. You try to be civilized.
You try to be curious. You try to be gentle. You don't have to be best friends with them. You might never be, but making space for them to exist because they serve a purpose, right? Like traumatic responses create coping mechanisms, and they serve a purpose. They keep you safe. They help you get through it. They mean you don't die, which is important because once you're there, there's nothing we can do. So yeah, they don't have to be your best friends. You don't have to love them forever, but to make space for them so that you are comfortable is a huge part of the work. And that is where sort of that mindfulness and meditation practice comes in, once you can sit comfortably for an extended period of time, because it's not something you can do in 20 minutes. But yeah, so I think that in a very roundabout way answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I think if please correct me if I'm wrong. So in order to get comfortable with these aspects of our lives, yoga will actually help us be more resilient and more tolerant with parts of ourselves. So, and when we practice tolerance, we can actually make peace with them. So I guess that's what you were referring. Oh, thanks. That actually answers a huge part of my inquiry. So thank you very much. So this is our last question. Uh, it's the recipe guy. Uh, he wants to ask that what lessons in life took you the longest to learn?
I love all of these deep questions first thing in the morning. This is awesome. This is an interesting question because in sort of the Yoga Sutras, there's this sort of fundamental notion that all human suffering is based in the sort of human experience of being alone. And I'm sure we have all felt that at various points. Some of us are probably still feeling it, and COVID has definitely not helped the situation. In that sort of, I am alone, my experience is unique, no one can understand this, I have no one to relate to. And sort of, as a kid with chronic pain, I definitely felt very, very alone. And yoga, like the fundamental sort of aspects of yoga are about being in relationship. It is the understanding that we are all connected universally. We are, the same atomic energy, the same cosmic particles as each other, as the natural world, as the universe. And while I know that intellectually and I can say that to you, I forget. I still feel alone. And so for me, this is the lesson that I'm still learning. I have not finished learning it. But the deep, deep understanding on sort of a cellular atomic level that I am always connected to a greater universe. I'm always part of something bigger that, ultimately I like to believe has, good things planned for me, is the lesson that I'm still learning and will probably be learning for the rest of my life, because everything is stacked against that, fundamental understanding that we are connected. Like capitalist systems are designed to profit from the fact that we feel alone. And, everything in this world is built to make money off the fact that we feel like we are separate and we are not connected and we cannot act together. So this for me continues to be the lesson that I come back to, the fact that we are all in deep relationship with each other and should be acting not only for the good of ourselves, but for the good of everyone else, because we all are connected. And so when any of us is suffering, all of us are suffering.
Thank you. That was a very profound answer. And I hope that the lesson that you are learning is helping us a lot of us to go over through our lives as well. So this was the final part, my definitive final part of our session today. But before we say anything further, everyone in Team Bertho wishes you the happiest birthday of your life today. I mean, it's kind of vague, but happy birthday, Niya.
Thank you. You're so lovely.
I mean, it's just the beginning of the day, but we really hope that the day forward you get to live. I mean, it started with all these existential questions, so let's say that it was a good start for the day.
It's a great
Team Bertho. The Team Bertho wishes you the happy birthday, and may you achieve everything in your life, or learn and prosper and help others as you are paving through, and that is very fulfilling. I mean, you are an inspiration, Niya, and we really hope to learn a lot from you today.
Thank you
and
so much.
Okay, so how did you like the session of today?
I love this. I mean, I think there's no better way to start a birthday than with a bunch of existential questions where you think about the meaning of your life. So this is awesome. Thank you for the very, very thoughtful engagement. Thank you for the space to share about yoga therapy. It's a pretty young profession, to be honest. Like, most people haven't really heard about it or understand what we do. So it's great to be able to sort of bring this into the world, to have space to share this story. And I loved the questions. These are not the usual questions that I get. Most people are like, I have shoulder pain, what do I do? So thank you, thank you, thank you for the very, very thoughtful engagement. It was such a pleasure to be here and such a great way to start today.
Thank you. That's an incredible review from you. And I'm guessing that you're familiar with Team Bertho's work. So what would you say about us? Do you want to point anything where we can improve ourselves, or is there anything that we got to make an impact in your life in any way, shape, or form? I mean, we read your story in the Life Lessons and Human Heroes venture, and and people loved it, and people learned a lot. They just got like a side of you, but now today they got more sides of you. I mean, there are more sides to explore, but it was fulfilling that we got to know you and we got to learn from you. So what would you want to add about Team Bertho?
I think the work that you're doing is fantastic. Like, thank you for making space for people to share these stories and inspire each other. This is sort of a very big picture. So in addition to yoga therapy, I have an activism history as well. And so I've been involved with sort of social movements and social change, and like maybe a little bit of that came out when I was making commentary on capitalism. But what I would love to see in the longer term, also because I have a sense of timelines and what the real world is like, is sort of what is that system level change? You know, what are those big pieces of the world that you would like to like really move and really shift? And whether that's more spaces for the voices of diverse women to sort of really put their stories out there in the world, because we just aren't represented very well. Like, I haven't seen very many South Asian yoga teachers, to be honest, and I am one. So like, you think we would all hang out together and talk about stuff, but we don't. So like, which voices, critically thinking about sort of which voices you're amplifying to the world and where you can fill gaps in underrepresentation so that, people see more differently abled people, more diverse, like people who represent that wonderful broad scope of diversity, and making those stories real to the world, because until they are, people forget that they exist. You have this wonderful, wonderful platform. So that would be sort of a gentle suggestion in terms of sort of activist critical thinking about whose stories you choose to tell or make space for.
Thank you very much. One of our correspondents, the Ichi-go Ichi-e series are delegated to people by Team Bertho and Yes Girls Movement. And Yes Girls Movement also wished you a happy birthday, and they thanked you for this amazing session.
The least I could do. I'm so, so grateful to be here with all of you this morning. It's very lovely.
Thank you very much, Niya. It was a great experience for me personally to be conversating with you for this session. And I hope I did not bother you much. Thank you. And I hope you liked the conversations and the sessions as well, as you just said. So to our viewers, this was it for our second session of Ichi-go Ichi. I hope you liked the session today, and now we hope to see you for the next session. Now, goodbye and good luck for next time. Thank you, everyone.